Hello everyone, my name is Shayna White and I identify as a Caucasian or white, and with that my race has been something that I haven't really had to think about often, being that it is the dominant race in this society. I do not experience anything like microaggressions or racism, and I grew up in a predominantly white city. I was very sheltered as a child, and because of that, I was not exposed to many other cultures or races. Um, it wasn't until I went off to college for my undergrad that I witnessed different forms of racism. It was really the first time I was around people who weren't white. After moving to Tucson, Arizona for undergrad, I became aware of racial identity development through my studies. When I took a class on identity was the first time that I really learned about race and explored my own racial identity and how it had affected my experiences in life. I haven't experienced racism myself, so I'm going to speak to something that I have witnessed multiple times in the job field. When I was 18 years old, I was working at a Ross store, which is a department store that sells clothing and shoes and accessories. I had two supervisors there who worked as the front end supervisors. So they were in charge of cashiers, people that worked on the floor, fitting room, etc. It's a slightly higher position than minimum wage positions, so there wasn't a set pay for them. The two people that held this position was a white male and a Latino male. They both had similar qualifications as well as experience, but they were getting paid very differently. The white male was getting paid about an eighth more than the Latino man was getting paid. A lot of times people speak about the wage gap between men and women. We always hear about the gender wage gap, but there is also such a thing as a race wage gap. This is a good example of institutionalized racism, right? Ideally, we should all be making the same amount of money at the same position as long as the experience and the qualifications are the same, but this is rarely the case. In this particular situation, I went to my Latino supervisor and I spoke to him about addressing this pay gap with his supervisor. However, when we were having that conversation, he was more afraid to lose his job and told me he was grateful to even have the position in the first place. He was okay with being paid less because of his race, based on his ideology that at least he had a job. This speaks volumes about the depth of racism in this specific area. As a Latino man, he was afraid to advocate for better pay for fear of losing his job, but in reality, he had the right to be making the same amount as his white counterpart. I've experienced this myself as a woman in the field, but never because of race. The reason I haven't experienced this is because through a racial lens is because I am white and of the dominant race. So people can see my race and oftentimes will equate it with education and success. So this is absolutely a privilege that has kept me safe from institutionalized racism. In this situation, I could have gone further in advocating for my supervisor, my Latino supervisor, but again, he was afraid of losing his job, so he would rather just stay quiet about it and be grateful for what he had. So according to Erikson's stages of development, I was in the identity versus confusion stage of my development when this particular situation took place. At this point in my life, I was very much still trying to figure out who I was as a person. I was developing my sense of self. This event not only showed me how our system discriminates against people, but it also pushed me to learn more about racism and discrimination in society. If I had not moved out of my hometown, I would not have experienced events like this. It would likely be in a very different career field altogether. Looking back, this was one of the inciting incidents that really sparked my passion for social justice. There are many, many ways to act against the racism in society, especially for the dominant race, right? There's ways to speak out. But according to the Carleton University, one of the ways in which I can act against institutionalized racism is to speak up when I witness discrimination against others and discuss these issues of inclusion and diversity with children, youth, as well as adults. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to looking at other people's videos for this discussion.